There's a saying, if they don't pay attention. If you don't pay for something, you don't pay attention. If you get a course for free, you will not be after it as much as if you would have paid 2K for it. Software solution today, it's rarely one size fits all. Usually you have some component of individualization, personalization needs to be implemented into the current ecosystem of the customer's IT systems. The most complex niche of sales or the most complex product you can sell to in terms of the number of stakeholders, the decision makers, the departments that are involved. Typically, if you sell a database, SaaS solution, software, you can count with 6, 12, 18 months of sales cycle.
Before we begin the podcast, I have a super simple ask for you. If you could subscribe to the channel, that would help us reach more business owners every single day. Thank you. Let's begin. Jiri, you're a senior account exec at MongoDB, and you've been in developer software sales for quite a long time. So, what makes this specific niche of sales unique?
I would say it makes it unique because it's the most complex niche of sales or the most complex product you can sell to in terms of the number of stakeholders, the decision makers, the departments that are involved in such a decision making, the length of the sales cycle. So typically, if you sell a database, SaaS solution, software, cloud-based solution, you can count with 6, 12, 18 months of sales cycle. So managing all the complexity and length, I would say, is probably the most distinguishing part of it.
Okay. So with that, how many touch points do you typically have?
Hundreds. I think it depends, right? So I would need, it's a good question. I would need to keep track. Maybe I should check all the emails and follow-ups and meetings we have, but it will be probably 300-400 touch points until you eventually get a signature on a contract.
Okay, interesting.
And I'm not speaking specifically now for MongoDB, but I'm speaking specifically for, let's say, software sales or IT cloud-based sales solutions, right?
Right. So why is it that much? What specifically in the businesses are making it that you need this many contact points?
Yeah. So, I mean, take for an example. Let's say you sell something to an individual, like a B2C. So let's say someone cold calls you and wants to sell you like a magazine subscription or a newspaper subscription. Then you are the decision maker, right? You can do the decision on your own. If you actually want to have the newspaper subscription, you have the discretionary funds. So you are also deciding about the budget, and there is no one else that you need to ask for approval. Maybe your spouse, husband, or wife, maybe you need to ask them if they also want to have it, but that's that. So that's a really low, complex, very transactional, fast-paced selling, where you can basically do a sale within maybe one call, one meeting, or maybe 2 meetings, right? Maybe one follow-up or something. If you go to the different side of the spectrum, in B2B, let's say a software solution. Software solution today, it's rarely one size fits all. Usually you have some component of individualization, personalization needs to be implemented into the current ecosystem of the customer's IT systems. There are usually multiple people that are involved in the decision-making process. You have one person that is still deciding over the budget, but you have multiple people that are deciding whether this is the right fit for the solution. Then you have involved, for example, a legal department that they want to check, hey, is this solution actually compliant with the company's policies? Then you have a compliance department that want to understand, okay, is the product built in a way that is compliant with the company's policies? Then you maybe have the actual users of the software. So let's say you're implementing a CRM system, right? So rarely a department will go and say, hey, we are now implementing a CRM system like Salesforce, for example, for the whole company with thousands of employees, without actually asking the employees what do they think about the solution. So usually they want to try it out. There's maybe like a POC, a proof of concept, where they are first trying out the solution. And another part is that you need to capture the requirements. So the company will likely have some technical requirements that they want to solve. And this can be a list of 10, 20, 50, 80 criteria that needs to be matched with your solution. And if you go one step further into the sales process, you spend at least 5 to 10 meetings with the customer just to understand their problem and the business implication. So let's say maybe you are Amazon and you are buying a new some e-commerce software for the business, right? So let's say Amazon is buying a new e-commerce solution from someone, from a third-party vendor. Then Amazon will have a problem with this e-commerce solution. And you as a sales rep need to understand much more in depth what is the actual problem that you are solving for the customer and which business impact this problem has on the business of the customer. Because compared to a very fast-paced transactional B2C sale, it can be very compulsive and impulsive sales process. So let's say you are at an airport and you are jumping on an airplane and you want to listen to a podcast, for example, right? And you don't have earphones. You go to the electronics store at the airport and you just buy the earphones. Maybe you get some consulting, 10 minutes with the guy at this electronics store, but you buy it because the problem is very straightforward. A problem that the company wants to solve in B2B is very complex. And to solve it and to offer the customer the right solution, you spend a lot of time in different meetings to understand what is the actual problem they try to solve, what is the root cause of the problem, and how is the problem impacting their business. So to give you one example, let's say that the web shop of some e-commerce store, Zappos, maybe in the early days, right? It's offline 1 hour per day, right? So the web shop is not available because the data centers, somehow the systems are down, right? So, okay, so that sounds like a problem that needs to be solved, right? Something that the company needs to spend, invest money in. But what if I would tell you that the web shop is down for 1 hour per day, but at 3 a.m. in the morning? Not that many people are shopping at 3 a.m. in the morning. So the actual business impact on the bottom line of Zappos will probably be very small because there is a little revenue and transactions happening at 3 a.m. in the morning. But what if I would tell you that the downtime occurs every day at 5 p.m. in the afternoon? Everyone comes back from work, everyone is shopping. It would be a disaster if this would happen at the prime time. So the business impact, meaning the lost revenue due to that outage of the e-commerce platform, is much higher. This means that the deal size, the urgency is also a completely different. So I think there are different components to that question, I would say.
Yeah, I know. So it sounds like the biggest problem is just pretty standard, is just figuring out what the solution is. And because it's so custom tailored to every single client, it's really hard to just, I guess, productize it, if you will. That being said, I'm curious, do you know a lot about backend? I'm sure that has to come in as you're selling it. So you have to kind of know how programming languages work, how it connects to the database, what a DNS is, all of these different little components that change with especially software services and online services. Like, do you have a background in that or no?
So specifically, I don't have any background in tech. So I studied economics, international business in university. I have no IT background whatsoever. So in such a complex sale, if you sell a software solution, well, you usually have some type of pre-sales architect, solution architect, engineer that is helping you in that customer engagement to deal specifically with those technical issues. But I'm more in charge of running the process with the customer, organizing the meetings, qualifying the opportunity, asking the right questions, and steering the conversation towards a close.
Okay. So do you kind of work in like tandem with someone else then? Like a kind of a partnership, or does that change around? Oh, I got balloons.
Yes, so it's usually so complex software sales. It's a team sport, so you never do it yourself because I can only do that much because I only know that much about the product. So usually I have we call it solution architect. That's then the person that can understand like the back end, the solution, the architecture, the current architecture of the customer. Then maybe we have someone from the professional services side that helps with the implementation. We might even have some partner manager that brings in some external resources. So you work in a team of people together with the customer.
If you're a business owner and struggling to get your website to be found online, I have a gift for you. I've helped 110 service businesses increase their website traffic and generate leads online. My gift to you is a short 20-minute search engine optimization crash course. The goal of it is to get you from 0 to 1 so that at minimum, you're able to be found on Google. Unfortunately, unpacking all of SEO would take too long, but this will get you 80% of the way there. So are you ready to leverage your website? Grab the SEO course at tuckercmdigital.com/SEO-crash-course. Again, tuckercmdigital.com/SEO-crash-course. And back to the podcast. Okay. I guess I didn't know. So are they specifically like a sales architect, if that's a good way to frame it? So like they work with sales, but they're the engineering side of sales?
Yes, yeah. So they have their responsibility is to map out the technical landscape of the customer, understand the customer's technical requirements, and map out how the solution that you want to sell solves the customer's pain points and requirements that he has.
Okay. On kind of that pain points topic, what are the most common pain points you run into?
Specifically, you mean specifically with databases or software or B2B?
We'll go with sales? Databases. So, because you're at MongoDB,
Yes. So I think there are a couple of ones. So I would say first one is time to market, right? So with traditional relational databases like SQL, like MySQL, Postgres, what have you have a tabular structure. So you have a very rigid data model. So this means for you as a customer that if you want to develop fast, iterate fast, you run into a bottleneck because all of a sudden the data model doesn't fit into maybe the new requirements that the business has. And then you need to break up the whole data model, build a new data model, normalization, all those things. So this is the first thing, time to market. The second issue is that speed in retrieving information or data. So let's say you have an app, right? You have some maybe Uber, for example, right? The Uber app also needs some database in the backend where it gets the data from your profile. And you as a user, you open your Uber app, and the Uber app needs like 10 seconds to load all your profile, your stats, your last rides, your payment history, whatsoever. You'd be very dissatisfied as a customer because no one will wait these days 10 seconds for his profile to wait, right? It's 10 seconds, like ages. So customers also struggle with the real-time delivery of the data out of the database. And then where also MongoDB comes into play because it's a real-time fast database. And a third thing that comes to my mind is that customers today have tons of data. Data is everywhere, but data is usually stored in silos. To make data really useful, for example, customer data. So you have like, what has the customer ordered? Which points has he gathered? Like, what was his purchase history? What does he has on the wish list? What is his address? And what have you? Usually, this data is stored very often in different silos. This means that you cannot do proper analytics and like capitalize on the data. You always want to create some type of single view. And companies are struggling with the siloed data, so they cannot redeem the value out of the data they have. So again, they are looking for new databases, new systems like MongoDB or others out there to create that single view, because like a NoSQL document-based data model allows you to collect data from different sources in one place to create that single view. So I don't get too much techie. I think it explains.
Yeah, so to dumb this kind of down, like databases in general, especially SQL, you have a bunch of like mini databases, if you will. And the problem is putting it all so that you can see it in one. Because if you're trying to take like 25 different tables or databases, you get this join hell, which is essentially when you merge them, and it just sucks. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I do this a ton on websites, and I typically just create a view where it does it all, and I never have to think about it again. But then like you said, another pain point, when you have to change the database over, you have to rebuild that entire thing, renormalize it, get all the tiers of norm. It's just, yeah, 100%. I can definitely see that. So you did AWS as well. How is that different from MongoDB? How does,
I mean, look, AWS is Amazon is a fabulous. It's a great company to work in. First of all, but AWS is a cloud. It's a hyperscaler, right? So it's not offering just one specific solution. Like MongoDB has like one specific database that's very like tailored down to a specific use case, right? Really deep dive into one database technology. AWS offers everything, right? So you have databases, you have compute, you have networking, you have AI ML services, you have, I don't know, video and audio streaming services, you have high performance computing, you have GPU computing. So I think by now, like back in my days at least, AWS had 120 different services, right? ETL services, products. MongoDB is one service. So the sales conversation, if you are working in a sales at AWS and MongoDB, it's a completely different one, because technically you can solve everything. And the challenge for you at AWS is that you need to decide which, like you need to actually find the problem that the customer wants to solve. Because you could solve everything, but you need to find the one problem that currently has the biggest urgency or creates the biggest business pain, so to say. I would say this is the biggest difference, right?
okay. Is it hard in this
Imagine
stuff?
maybe I can just interrupt one more. Sorry. So let's imagine it's like if you would go to Walmart, where you can buy everything from clothes to dairy or whatever, versus you would go to a bakery, right? They have just the bread, but you can also get the bread at Walmart, but probably the bread at the bakery will be a bit better.
Right. Would you say it's harder to sell for AWS or harder to sell for MongoDB?
It's harder to sell MongoDB.
Okay. I would assume though that the advantage with MongoDB is it's so niche, like your leads have to be way more qualified. Am I wrong in saying that or no?
I think you need to be much more specific in the sales engagement in terms of really understanding if the customer has a problem that he wants to solve, that needs to be solved with your solution. Because with AWS, as said, you can technically solve everything, and as customers are already using AWS, there's a high organic growth on their current services. So as a seller, sometimes you come into a situation where you also get a lot of inbound requests of customers. Hey, we want to do this and this and this and that. Plus, I mean, to be honest, if you're working for Amazon, the brand around Amazon is still much bigger than if you say I work for MongoDB, right? So if you say, hey, I work for Amazon, and I cold call someone and I say, hey, I'm from Amazon, I will most likely get a meeting. Amazon is calling. Okay, let's take the meeting. Probably it will be something interesting. But if you say, hey, I'm calling from MongoDB, and you're calling an executive, a lot of executives that are not in IT, they just don't know what MongoDB is. So you need to be much more specific in your pitch, in your outreach, to capture the attention of a prospective buyer.
True. Yeah, because I wouldn't have known what MongoDB is if I didn't have like a backend background, if you will. Like if I didn't dive deep into background, I would have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's a huge issue. Like, or let's say a huge challenge if you want to sell to a business person.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, you kind of need to be a little bit warm, like lukewarm leads, if you will.
Yes.
So kind of on that, how often do you do cold outreach? Because I know you're doing the podcast now. So is cold outreach still really big for you, or was it ever really big?
It's the only way how we create new pipeline. So if I don't pick up the phone, or if I don't initiate contact with some potential customers where I think there could be some match either on a phone or either via email or via LinkedIn, nothing happens. So you have this ratio between inbound and outbound, right? More or less 100% of what I do is outbound. So if I don't initiate, there's no business coming in. So I would say outbound is very, very important.
I would say that, like, does the podcast help at all? Because at least from my perspective, having the podcast and having that very personable brand, if you will, helps with the cold outreach as well, because they feel like they know you. It's almost like a parasocial relationship there. So they feel like they know you already.
Yeah, I don't think that helps me, because my customers are not so the customers and the people I sell to when I'm selling MongoDB are not the same people that are the listeners of my podcast, because the listeners of my podcast are other salespeople, right? They want to know, hey, I do want to understand the sales tips and tricks and best practices. But my customers are maybe some IT engineering managers or engineers, or maybe some CTOs, CIOs. They don't listen to my podcast. They are not interested in sales stuff. They would be interested in, maybe IT stuff, but this is not the content that I'm creating. So my personal brand I'm creating with my sales podcast is not helping me with selling better or more in software.
I suppose that's a good point, because your offer with your podcast is sales training, correct?
Sales. My podcast is about B2B sales, right? So
Okay.
I yeah.
Do you sell anything with it? Like, do you have a training course or anything like that, or no?
Yeah, I do sales trainings at companies. So I do specific things. First of all, I train SDRs and BDRs how to book more meetings with potential decision makers over phone, email, and LinkedIn. That really still works in the 21st century. And the second thing I do is I teach AEs, account executives, account managers, how to run the complex software sales processes in order to reduce the sales cycles, to shorten down the sales cycles, and to increase their win rates.
Okay.
So this,
Okay.
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I can't dive too deep into it because it's in German, and well, I'm kind of SOL there. On that kind of, so for sales specifically, what can marketing do to help you? Like, I know you're in like SaaS sales or whatever. Do you have a marketing team that brings in leads? And if so, kind of like, how can they help?
So I think that marketing is in the process, right? So first you have marketing, then you have sales. So how marketing can help sales is, you said it right, with qualified leads. I think one big thing that marketing is doing for us in sales is events, for example, organizing events where we can invite customers to, organizing all the venues, the agenda, the ideas, how to frame the event, organizing webinars where we send out via email and invite customers to educate them about our products, run specific account-based campaigns on LinkedIn to target specific personas with a certain message, with the aim, and all of it is the ultimate aim to create awareness, educate the customer, and find new opportunities and create new pipeline.
Right. I know the biggest problem with marketing is the word qualified, of getting leads that are good. And so I suppose with events, especially if you're doing paid events, that already has a threshold for people that are interested and almost kind of like want to buy or interested in it. Would you say that you find a lot of leads from events?
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. Because it's a way how to educate the customer, enable them around the technology, showcase your use cases, bringing in a guest speaker bring a speaker from your customers, right? So at events, you should always try to bring a person, a company that's already customer with you, speaking about how they are using your product and which challenges they needed to overcome, and the results, right? So it creates social proof. So that's a big thing. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the best kind of social proof. Because like you can't fake that. Like a lot of people, like people will fudge numbers on the internet, and people are kind of aware of that. But you can't like lie about someone coming to the event and talking about you. Like that is not. I know.
Exactly.
For the events, how does that work with leads? Do you go to the events? Do you talk to people there? Do you get emails after? Like how does that work? Walk me through that.
Yeah, that's a good question. How does it work? I mean, if people come to our events, or people come to events, you usually have an attendee list, right? So you know who has attended, they have a title, maybe you have some email address or even a telephone number. And based on the title, you already know, is this a person you want to speak with, right? Does this person maybe have authority? Is he managing a team? Is he able to influence or maybe do decisions? And then after the event, you reach out to them, right? So, hey, yesterday you attended our event. Thanks for being here. Tell me what did you particularly enjoy about it, right? And you get some feedback. And then you can ask, okay, cool. And speaking about MongoDB, if you think about your current landscape, which particular application are you struggling with currently that maybe we could see if MongoDB could be a potential solution for it, right? So it's about follow-up. You don't get usually people are not raising their hands saying, hey, I need your help. Sometimes it happens, but out of that event, you get a list, which are then warm leads because they already attended your event, and then you do a follow-up and see if you can start a conversation around the project.
So from a marketing perspective, kind of what I'm hearing is the event is almost like a lead magnet, because you're offering essentially free information in exchange for your email, title, things about you to get you kind of in the door. Yeah. I suppose that works really well for B2B. That's really smart.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily free events. It can also be paid events. So these days, a lot of companies are hosting paid events. Just because if you say it's for free, you have a low attendee rate, or let's say no-show rate, a high no-show rate. So you always want to subjectively increase the value of the event by saying, hey, it costs you $50, $100. Because then customers say, hey, I paid the money, I will go there, right? And there's a saying, if they don't pay, they don't pay attention. If you don't pay for something, you don't pay attention. If you get a course for free, you will not be after it as much as if you would have paid $2,000 for a course. Let's say the course we do with Darren, right? I think we would be as much into the course if Darren would be just doing this course for free. Now we paid a substantial amount of money for it, right? So now we want to get the most out of it. This means that we will be much more attentive in the process of the training. And sales, same is with events. You should charge people because you have a higher attendee rate, lower no-show rate, and people also subjectively think that there's more value for them to get.
Yeah. The downside, though, I'm going to put this out there. So especially for B2C or really lower ticket B2B businesses, it's really hard to get people to pay. And the reason being is because the clients that you're going after just don't have the capital or can't really justify it. And so especially for, let's say we have an HVAC company and we're building essentially a funnel for them. One of the hardest things to do is if you're going for an HVAC company paying for something when you need your air conditioner fixed just to learn about your air conditioner, that's really dumb. So B2B, this works phenomenally, especially higher ticket B2B, but your local company, you're going to run into some issues there.
Yeah. I mean, I would challenge that. I would say even if you just say, hey, it's $10 per ticket, and on the other side you say, hey, but there is free drinks or some finger food included, or there is a speaker or something. So it's always value versus price. If the subjective value that I think I will get out of that meeting is higher than what I'm paying or the effort I need to take to do to that event, I will pay it. And so yeah, I think it's really around framing it in a way that the person thinks that there is value out of for them.
Yeah,
in it.
That's a really good point, because especially if you're offering if you're $10 and there's food included, no one's gonna bat an eye at that. But the problem is it has to be something that they want to go to anyways.
Yes. And you make it more exclusive, you make it more exclusive than if you say, hey, you need to pay for it. You need to pay for it because this is a serious event. You can get serious. We have invited a guest speaker. You will get some value out of this. It's not just some random, hey, come here and network type of event. And so, yeah, I think value always comes with price. And the experience I had with events is, if people don't pay, they don't pay attention.
Are you struggling to find clients? Tired of the headache of finding new people to hire? Worried about your competition beating you out? I've helped service businesses find new employees, dominate their competition, and most importantly, grow their business on autopilot without the headache of marketing. Listen, I wouldn't believe it either, but we have the work to prove it. With 110 clients, we've mastered the art of marketing service businesses. Want to learn how we can help grow your business? Go to services.tuckercmdigital.com. Again, that's services.tuckercmdigital.com. And back to the podcast. I have this really funny thing that I saw with, it was a plumber specifically on LinkedIn video. And he was talking about how he essentially created this subscription model. And the subscription model is how he retains customers, because he'll do like $35 a month and you get 10% off. So like if something gets messed up, you get 10% off that. And it's this like, it's kind of the weird thing here of like you paid for it, so you almost have to go with him, but it's so cheap, you're saving money.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing here. The value is higher than what you're paying for it. And it's a way to essentially get the lead. So it's not exactly a lead magnet, but it's a really good customer retention model. On kind of customer retention with AWS, you could kind of upsell, I guess would be a way to phrase it, of like different offers. Did you do anything like that with AWS in terms of you already have their account information, check in like 3 months later and say, hey, we saw you're using this might be beneficial?
Yeah. 100%. I think one thing that you need to understand, and maybe your audience as well, if you are selling software IT and then you are an account manager or an account executive or however those positions are called in different companies, but different, right? You have always full revenue responsibility with that customer, right? So you are always looking out for opportunities how to increase the revenue that you have with your current customers, because selling to your current customer is always easier than winning a completely new customer. It's easier to upsell a current customer with an additional product than to close a completely new customer, because you already have built up the trust. They're using your product, they know you, they have value out of it. It's much easier. There is the connection between you and them, so it's easier. So with AWS, for example, right? So maybe they are using some service and you know that it would be complementary with some other service, right? Maybe they're just using compute, but there's no backup solution. Or maybe they're using some, that they are running some AI and ML models on instances, but they would be much faster and much more efficient GPU optimized, or GPU instances. It would be much better for the customer, right? So then you just call them up and say, hey, how happy are you with this and this and that? Actually, there would be a way how you could speed this process up. It would cost you less, but at the end of the day, you would be more efficient with it. You want to look into that, right? So it's always about looking out what is a complementary service that you have that the customer is still not using, and reaching out to them, because it's easier to upsell a current customer than sell to a completely new one.
Yeah. On that, I'm sure you sold quite a few customers. How do you balance that? Like checking into their account, maybe you check once a week, maybe you check once a month, whatever. But how do you balance that with finding new customers and building the amount in your, what do you call it, portfolio, I guess? I don't know what the term is.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So usually you know how much new pipeline with new customers you need per quarter or per month to hit your numbers, right? So you first always look out to add into your sales pipeline opportunities with new customers. And once you have that, you look, okay, so what do we have with the current customers for projects, opportunities, and how could we maybe upsell those ones? Sometimes you even have like a separate person that is only taking care of the upsell part in the team, right, that is working on that account. But balancing it's tricky I need to admit. Priority number one is always first hitting your KPIs in terms of new pipeline, because let's say you have 10 customers you can only, they have only so much upsell potential, right? So let's say you keep focusing on new customers for 3 months and you only focus on upselling the existing ones, you will very quickly run into a situation. Now you have upsold them and they have basically everything and there's no more potential, but you have not built up pipeline with new customers. Your revenue will go down for a couple of months because then you will all of a sudden need to shift your focus and start finding new customers. So I think you need to do both. How to balance it, it's hard. And how to do it is you need to have a KPI, how much new pipeline you need on per month, per quarter, or per year, and always prioritizing new pipeline generation.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying like newer customers are essentially the 20% that'll get you the 80%. And then you have to kind of fill in the gaps with the other customers, if you will. Like not exactly that frame, but that's where I'm going with that.
Kind of.
So I also wanted to ask you, so we were talking about the sales podcast, but you have 200 episodes out now. So what's the biggest thing you've learned from hosting it?
That just releasing content is not enough. Probably is the biggest learning. That consistency matters, but only if you also work on your quality and if you iterate and have the mentality of every episode needs to be better, at least maybe just 1% better, because you can produce a lot of content for years and still get very low views or no subscriptions if your content is just bad, right? So just producing content is not enough. Still showing up is already half of the battle. So producing content is already half of it, but the second half of it is the distribution, the marketing. So just because you, even if your content is great, your podcast will not grow much because you need to market the content, right? You need to distribute the content on LinkedIn. You need to post, say, hey, there's content, look into that, right? It could help you because people won't find, I mean, if you are on YouTube and you do good SEO and good keywords and stuff, people eventually will click on your videos and content. But in audio podcasts, you don't have that search engine behind that like you have on YouTube. That's why so many people are now doing YouTube podcasts, right? Because YouTube is the search engine of Google, so people can find you via keywords if they are looking for something, a problem to solve. So yeah, so that's that.
Yeah, that was one thing that I found really interesting because, like we mentioned before, we're both in Darren's course. He was talking about that in essentially one of the videos. I think he calls it an incubator now. But he was talking about that, and I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. This is just Google. This is SEO optimization. And it's the funniest thing when you connect those two things, especially with the podcast and the search engine, because that's not something you'd think about. I know he framed it as kind of like YouTube is an education tool. And so if you're looking for something educational, podcasts are one of the best ways to go because you can absorb as much information as possible and you can go really in depth.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge now with the podcast for me personally is doing the leap from the audio podcast to the video podcast, because in the audio podcast, you have a much higher retention rate of the listeners. So the listeners are much more patient with you coming straight to the point or content. With YouTube, people are the attention span is much smaller. So if you don't grab the attention and the customer, or I say the customer, the viewer sees the value of the video within, let's say, I don't know, 30 to 60 seconds, he will click away. While with the audio podcast, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes until the people will shut off if you don't deliver value. And keeping that in mind and tuning the content for audio and video, I think it's that's for me the next learning curve. And also including stories, personal stories, make it more relatable as well. So you never finish learning when you're producing content, right?
No, you do not. Do you do, so you know how Darren on his podcast has like those clips in the beginning, almost like short little snippets of the highlights. Do you do that at all?
Yeah, I do one snippet per episode. So I have a video editor and he does one short, YouTube short, Instagram reel Depends what you say. One per episode, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking. I guess that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like at the beginning of Darren's podcasts, he takes little audio clips and snips them together. Do you do that at all?
You mean as an intro to hook
Yes.
the listener at the beginning? Yeah. So I take when I have a guest, I take one interesting quote from the episode that has around 10 to 20 seconds of length. One interesting thing he said, something provocative or some bold statement that the guest said in the interview, and I put it at the beginning of the podcast to hook the listener. Oh wow, that was an interesting statement. I want to find out more what this person will say during the rest of the interview, to hook them for the rest of the interview.
Yeah. I know Darren does that, but he does like really heavy editing on it, and he's kind of dialed that back a little bit, which is that's so hard. I've been playing around with editing, and I can't get that straight. Do you do?
It's super hard. It's super hard because you can invest so much time in just fine tuning that intro snippet. You could technically use like 2-3 hours just on that thing, right? But you always need to see where are you in your business, right? If you are a solopreneur editing everything yourself, you cannot spend 3-4 hours just on the intro snippet, right? At the time. If your business eventually grows and maybe you have a video editor that you pay, he then can invest more time to find snippets and snip them together, right? But it's always like input output. Can you afford it at the current state of your podcast maturity? If you want to say it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to boil the whole ocean, right? Start with, hey, I have a snippet, right? And then build from that.
Yeah, I know one thing.
Doesn't need to be perfect from get-go.
Yeah, one thing that I'm noticing as well is Opus clips. Like those do arguably a solid C/B job every single time.
Yeah.
But it's so cheap, the return on it is great. So like what I've started doing with it is doing 4 Opus clips a week and then 1 highly edited clip. And so what I do is I do 4 Opus clips for the podcast that comes out on Monday. And then 2 weeks later, I'll have, so after that week, I send it to my editor, whichever one did the best. And that's going to be the edited clip for the one 2 weeks later. So I'm already pre-selecting clips that do well to edit. Are you playing around with anything like that to kind of A/B test clips at all or no?
No.
Okay.
I'm not taking the time for this currently.
Okay. Is it like, where are you at in your podcast? Because I know you have a ton of volume. Like, where are you at in terms of editing to, like, let me reframe this. How are you taking your podcast from A to B to C and then posting it? Like, we'll start there.
You mean the process of production? So first is coming up with ideas for episodes. I consume a lot of content myself and I read a lot. So I have an Evernote document where every time I have an idea, I just put in just even if it's the title or a keyword just into the document. Then usually once per month or twice per month, I bulk script 2 to 4 episodes. So I do bulk preparation, right? So I sit down for 2 hours and I prepare 3 episodes or something like that. Scripting means not technically word by word, but like having like an outline or something I want to talk about. Then I bulk record. So I record, if I do solo episodes, 2 episodes, for example, in 2 hours, right? So I block 2 hours in my calendar and I record 2 episodes. The episodes are in Riverside, and my cutter has access to Riverside, so he downloads the files and he knows how to put all the things together. Finds like the snippet for the reel, for the short form, and delivers everything to me 3 days before the release date. Wednesday is release date of YouTube and audio podcast. Thursday is LinkedIn post plus newsletter, and Friday is video snippets on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube.
So you post you post 1 podcast a week and then 3 times a week.
I
Or 3
post
days a
one
week.
episode per week, and then I distribute like a link, then do a LinkedIn post, short,
Okay.
and newsletter.
Have you experimented around with more volume or no?
No, because I didn't have any time for it so far.
Okay. Yeah. Fair. I figured as much because you were doing sales. I wanted to ask.
Yeah. I mean, more distribution would be good, but at the end of the day, I need to pick my battles, right? So, and I mean, to be honest, 1 year ago, I haven't done any distribution at all. I just published content, and I started with the distribution just 1 year ago. So that's already a big leap for me. But more would be good. Ideally, you would post every day something, right?
Did the distribution completely, like when you started distributing it, we're back up. Did distributing the podcast more, like on LinkedIn and everything, did that like substantially increase your views, or did it kind of like slowly build up?
Slowly, I would say. So it's
Okay.
not like, oh wow, boom, this is now
Yeah.
skyrocketing. No, I wouldn't say. I would say it brought less value than I thought. Let's put it. I thought if I will start posting, I will drive more traffic to the podcast. There is more traffic, but it's much less than I would have expected.
Yeah, I agree with that. The big thing for me is like getting the right people, because I started out on Instagram and I was really, really good at getting views, but views don't translate to anything if they aren't the right people. And
exactly.
like, it's really hard to find that balance of where am I going to grow slowly, build a good audience versus blow up right away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's you need to find the right people, right? Because just if you have just clicks and downloads doesn't mean nothing if they are not your ideal customer profile, right?
Yeah, I hammer that into every single one of my clients. I'm like, talk to me. Who do you typically want to sell to? What is your avatar?
Yes.
Like, give that to me and I can help you. If you don't know what that is, we need to figure it out like now.
Yes. Definitely, 100%.
With the sales podcast, who is your avatar?
Individual sellers, sales reps that sell software that sell software, IT or cloud products, and a head of sales leaders that lead sales teams in IT and software sales.
Okay. I suppose yours is probably pretty niche because your podcast is in German. So you already kind of pre-select for everyone who knows German. And then two, you kind of have a niche-ish industry. Like, I wouldn't say it's like, you're not like living under a rock niche, but it's definitely niche.
It's a niche, yeah. It's a very specific audience. So I will never reach like millions of views or something, because it's not like, it's not like this, how to say, cooking, mental health thing that kind of where there's so much people that will watch it. So it will be less views with higher engagement and higher paying customers.
Yeah. I suppose you probably don't want as much of that either. Like, I feel like once you get to a certain threshold, it's just, there's too many people. Like, you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of Hermosi's thing of like, he can reach a huge broad audience, but it's not returning. Right. So there's diminishing returns. I'll tell you what, we're about to hit an hour mark here. So we'll wrap her up. So where do you want to send people? You want to?
Yeah, so if you're interested in B2B in software and IT sales, and you speak English, speak German, or understand German, you can check out my podcast because it's in German. So I'm based in Austria. So if you are just speaking English, you can just hit me up on LinkedIn. Interested in me, so connect with me. Happy to share anything if you want. As said, I'm specifically focused on German-speaking markets, so my content probably will be valuable only for a very small portion of your listeners.
Perfect. And I'll link everything down below as well. So if you're looking there you go.
Thanks, Andrew.